Okay, this is the final video in a series of 3. Apologies, I did originally anticipate that it would be a series of 2, but I decided to separate this final video as many of you will be familiar with the content already as I went over this in class. However, some of you didn't attend that session and you want some clarification on how do you create a timeline. Although this is not definitive, the main task is that you produce a timeline, not use particular software. So if you have a better suggestion on using a different type of software, you might choose to use that one, but then again you might not. So therefore I'm recommending that you use the timetoast.com online software, which is available at this address here, Timetoast. Okay, if you don't have an account you need to sign up or sign in. So we'll click on the sign up, and there you have a choice of creating your own username and email and password confirmation, agreeing to the terms and conditions and then signing up, or like myself, if I can remember my username and so on, you can then log in or sign in up there. So here we are, computer's a little bit slow at the moment, apologies. Right, there we go. So I believe I used my work email. And this is where I forget the password, I guess. Let's have a look. Okay, so there I've signed in successfully. So here are my timelines. If you attended the session last week, I spent about 10 minutes demonstrating how quickly you can get to grips with the software. When you create the timeline, here's a timeline running across the bottom. You put in a date at the beginning where the timeline will run from, and a date at the end, perhaps today's date. What I tried to demonstrate, the really purpose of me creating this timeline was to demonstrate how quickly you can create a timeline, and I actually did this in the session. Now, what I tried to do is demonstrate a timeline of the student voice session. And because the lowest time frame that you can work with is a day, and you won't want to work with anything less than a day in your case, but in my case I had to represent each day as representing 10 minutes. So here was my lesson plan, if you like. At the start of the lesson, on the 27th of April, I begin the session and make jokes about exam invigilation. And the reason I did that is because the tables were organised as if you were sat in an exam. If you weren't there, that joke is probably as unfunny as it was when I made it in the first place. The next thing that happened 10 minutes later was to explain Timetoast, and there you can see I've included a picture of some toast popping out of a toaster. Now be careful if you're going to choose to include pictures that your pictures are relevant in some way, and I think it'd be hard for me to justify how toast is relevant to Timetoast other than it sharing the name. Perhaps I might put a picture of a timeline in there as more suitable, and so on. You'll actually find examples of the historical development of education from 1944 onwards as timelines that you can actually view. And I said, wouldn't it have been nice if you'd known about this software before you completed the Politics of Change essay on the development of education from 1944 onwards in the UK. So this is how you construct the timeline. Depending on the theme that you've chosen, and the theme, if you like, that I chose was the development of the student voice session, you might choose the development of citizenship education, or the development of student voice, or even if you choose one of the old topics such as the expansion of higher education, or the expansion of widening participation within higher education, or whatever. It's a creative exercise, but it's a difficult exercise because there's so much material that you're going to have to be selective on what you actually put in the timeline and what you don't. After you've constructed the timeline, you're able to see the key events that you've put in there. You may remember last semester that I showcased this resource for you, Derek Gillard's educationengland.org.uk site. And in fact, Gillard's site is set out in sections like a timeline. And Gillard has identified various themes. Here are Gillard's themes: beginnings, towards a state system, class divisions, taking shape, post-war reconstruction, the wind of change, and so on and so on. So here we go. Let's say that you're looking at a particular aspect of education and you'd like to know what was its significant round about the middle of last century. And here Gillard outlines some of the main things. There are references, so you can trawl around there till your heart's content, seeing if Gillard can give you any clues as to significant events. Of course, any textbook that you pick up on the topic of education will naturally refer to significant events within the context of the chapter that is being discussed. Once you're happy with the overall content of your timeline, there is an opportunity to publish it. So once I've published the timeline, or rather once you've published your timeline, you need to share the timeline. In other words, you need to let me have sight of it. So you click on share, and provide me with the link. Etc, etc. Take that out of there. I should be able to, when you submit your completed 1000 words as to why you included certain things and the relevance of them, at the top of your rationale there should be a link such as this, on which I can, fingers crossed, click onto the link. And there we have it. Of course, to see your timeline represented like this, linearly, gives you some sort of format and basis for writing the rationale, because you might address each of these issues, or rather this representation of your timeline does provide you with some sort of an essay plan. Although these are what statements, the rationale should dig further and explain some of the why certain certain features were focused on. Although this table is quite brief and only includes what information, the rationale itself will of course include why information as to why other authors have seen certain events as significant. Again, finally, it's worth reiterating that this whole task of creating the timeline and then writing a rationale or a justification, if you like, is a creative process.